Hey guys, French Tutor here. Today I want to make an updated Sanhua guide. So there's a lot of new updates, and I want to make sure you have all the up-to-date information. So we're going to go over her kit and a lot of advanced tech. Let's talk about her fastest and most efficient rotations. And she has a new main DPS build, so I want to go over that as well. So yeah, let's get right into it. Okay, let's start with her basic attacks. It's going to be a 5-hit sequence like this. 1, 2, 3, and a double hit, and the last 5th hit that strikes like that. So there's going to be a lot of end lag at her 5th hit, so like here I can't really do anything. So make sure to animation cancel it with the most common ways like dashing, using your skill, using your liberation, or her special heavy attack. Basic attack 5 is a really strong move and it's going to be very useful, and I'm going to explain why later. Next, let's learn her heavy attacks. She has 2 of them and they're very important to her kit. But to understand how to use them better, we have to look at her Forte gauge. So you can see there are 2 areas, a white area and a light blue area. And what happens is if you hold your basic attack, this gauge starts moving left and right. And when you let go in a white area, you're going to do a normal heavy attack. But once you let go in a blue area, you're going to do a heavy attack detonate. Each of them have their own different purposes, so I'm going to explain that. But first, let me just explain one more thing called clarity. The purpose of clarity is to expand this light blue area in your Forte gauge, because it's going to be hard to try to match it in this little small area right here, right? So for example, if I use my basic attack 5 here, you can see the light blue area just got larger. And if I use the resonance skill, it gets even bigger. So to gain 1 stack of clarity, you can use your intro skill, your basic attack 5, or your resonance skill. To gain 2 stacks of clarity, you can use your resonance liberation. Once you use your special heavy attack, all stacks of clarity are gone. So it doesn't increase your damage or anything like that, it just helps you use your heavy attack detonate better. But also technically it helps you do it much faster as well, since the blue area is gonna be much closer, right? It's gonna be much closer so that you can use your heavy attack detonates much faster. So just keep that in mind. You're not going to really be thinking about adding like stacks of clarity like once you play her more, so don't worry about it too much, but it's something I should at least explain in this guide. Another thing you'll notice while you hold basic attack is that once the gauge falls on the blue area, it's going to start blinking for Sanhua. So you can use this as a visual indicator to know when to let go, like this. Also, if you hold down your basic attack, Sanhua actually can move freely, unlike other characters. So you can kind of decide which heavy attack you want to use based on the situation. Okay, let's go back to her heavy attacks again. So let's talk about her special one called Heavy Attack Detonate. The purpose of this one is to actually detonate any ice creations she makes from her resonance skill, her liberation, or her intro skill. So for example, if I use my resonance skill and then hold my basic attack and detonate like this, 2 things are going to happen. 1, I'm going to get extra Concerto energy, like a lot. And 2, when the ice shards explode, this is called Ice Burst, it does some extra chip damage. So keep in mind that this Ice Burst damage is considered resonance skill damage. So you're mainly going to do this process in order to get Concerto energy so that you can use your outro skill for your next main DPS, usually. Quick note, you do not get any Concerto energy from breaking in an ice creation from an intro skill. So this is going to be a 2-hit combo and each attack does the same damage. One interesting thing you can do with your heavy attack detonate is by quick swapping it into another character for the second hit. So basically, if you initiate the first hit, you can just swap to another character during the second hit at any time. So you could end up doing some fun stuff like this. Yep, just like that. Okay, now let's talk about her normal heavy attack. The main reason you want to use her normal heavy attack is to actually get to basic attack 5 faster. So what it does is it actually skips basic attack 1, 2, and 3 if you use a normal heavy attack like this. So if I do this, skip, boom. So I just went straight to basic attack 4 to 5, like that. Okay, and here's a quick comparison so that you can see how much faster you can get to basic attack 5. Okay, but why do we need to get to basic attack 5 faster? First, if you have her S1 unlocked, you're going to increase your crit rate by 15% for 10 seconds. And second, once you unlock her second inherent skill, the ice burst damage, when you break those ice creations and the chip damage you get from the explosions from the ice, will increase by 20% for 8 seconds. And third, it's going to give her 1 stack of clarity. There's going to be 2 ways to use normal heavy attack. There's an easy way and a more common way, and then a harder way. So the first way is actually using it during an animation. The reason why you want to use normal heavy attack during an animation is that you actually want to skip basic attack 1, like this. So right now, if I do it normally, there's basic attack 1 is going to come out, but we don't want that. We just want the heavy attack to come out like this, right? So the most common way to use normal heavy attack is during an intro skill. So what I'm going to do is use my intro skill, but I'm going to hold on to my basic attack so that I can buffer the attack. Okay, so I'm going to hold, and then that was my normal heavy attack there. Another common way is during her heavy attack detonates, so you can do something like this. And that's something a lot of main DPS builds will do. Another good way is after a plunge attack like this, like you kind of like surprise enemies or echoes, like when you fall on them with a plunge attack, and then you can start a sequence with a heavy attack. So yes, this normal heavy attack is very good to start like sequences where you don't have your intro skill as well, so you can start with some extra crit rate. Of course, after you do basic attack 5. Okay, the second way you can use a normal heavy attack is during a dash animation. So if I dash and do a heavy attack, I'm going to skip my basic attack 1 again. But it's a little hard to do. So in order to do this, you're going to see my mouse on the bottom left. So I'm basically holding both left and right mouse click to do this. So on a PS5, you should be able to just hold down both buttons. So this is a great way to approach enemies. And I wanted to mention that this move is a really good move to counterattack enemies. Like it's probably the best move because this hitbox lingers for a long time and it has a bit of range too. Okay, so for example, like this boss, there's a move where it's flying and it's kind of charging towards you, and it's a little bit hard to counterattack. So let me show you how easy it is to counter with her normal heavy attack. Okay, so it's gonna be this attack right here. It's gonna come flying, and I'm just gonna use a heavy attack. And you saw it, I used it very early, and it still lingers like crazy. It has a crazy range, so definitely practice it. So it's gonna take a bit of practice. Try to move in a direction first, and then just hold dash and your basic attack at the same time. Okay, let's talk about her resonance skill a little bit. So she's going to create a wall of ice and then do a backflip just like that. When she dashes during this animation, she's actually going to do a backflip just like this. So if you dash while holding a direction, you're actually going to do an air dash towards that direction. One common thing to do is follow up with a mid-air attack like this. Mainly, you're going to dash like that to avoid or dodge enemies' attacks. If you really want to avoid an enemy's attack, you can use a resonance skill, dash, and a grapple like this. And the other most common ways to actually cancel this backflip animation, because like she's kind of like in the air for too long, you can cancel that backflip animation with a resonance liberation like this. You can also cancel the animation with an echo like this. The cool thing about the echo cancel is that once you use a resonance skill, it's considered like you're jumping, right? So with that logic, you shouldn't be able to use an echo skill while jumping. But for some reason, you can use your echo during that animation. Also, if you want to challenge yourself, you can also cancel it by dashing really quickly without doing a backflip animation like this. But that takes timing, and it's not always useful, but once you pull it off, it actually feels really good to do. Keep in mind, if you do any of these animations too quickly, the wall of ice is not going to come out, okay? So you want to wait just a little bit. There's a timing for everything, but you do want to wait just a little bit before you do a second animation. So one thing about Sanhua is that her resonance skill has a little bit of less vertical range. So let's say for this enemy right here, you can see that it missed this enemy that was high up. And for her resonance liberation, she's going to create a wall of ice like this. And it does a lot of damage. And the most common follow-up attack would just be a heavy attack detonate to explode the ice. And the best way to use this is try to use it on enemies that are in a row. So let's say these enemies right here. And you just want to go to the center and hit from left to right and hit everyone. Also keep in mind the vertical range of this skill is really bad as well. So let's say for example I do this. I completely missed the wolf again. Okay, now let's talk about her rotations. But the first thing you must know is that any S5 and up Sanhua actually gets more Concerto energy. So if you have like S0, S1, S2 Sanhua, like if you don't have that many sequence nodes, you're going to gain less Concerto energy, and that's so not fair. So if you learn some rotations somewhere on YouTube or something, they might show you some kind of rotation, but in the end, it really depends on like what kind of Sanhua you have. For some reason at S5, Sanhua is going to gain extra Concerto energy when her Ice Burst hits enemies. So I'm going to show you an example right here. I have an S2 Sanhua and an S6 Sanhua. We're going to use the same two moves side by side. We're going to use a Resonance Liberation and then a Heavy Attack Detonate. Okay, so let's take a quick look at a side by side comparison. Okay, and right there. Okay, now what the heck just happened? You see on the left we have about half of a Concerto gauge, and for the S6 Sanhua we have a lot more. So I really don't understand why it's like this, but your rotations are going to be different. Okay, now we need to learn the most important thing that will help us with our rotations. And I call this the laws of detonation. Rule number 1. If the first hit of a heavy attack detonate hits an ice creation, it will detonate no matter what. The second hit doesn't matter. So for example, if I use my resonance skill and do a heavy attack detonate and dash out of the second hit, it's still going to detonate no matter what. So as long as your first hit of this hits any ice creation or remotely close to it, it's going to detonate. Rule number 2. Once you detonate any ice creation, all ice creations on the field will detonate at the time of detonation. So for example, if I leave my Liberation Ice Wall here and my Resonance Ice Wall here, and I detonate this one, my Liberation Ice Wall also detonates at the same time. Okay, now you know the important rules. So the sequence for this is going to be your Resonance Liberation, your Heavy Attack Detonate, and then your Resonance skill. That seems a little out of order, right? But it actually makes sense if you understood the two rules. So I'm just gonna show you first like how it works, and then I'm gonna kind of explain it step by step. Okay, so first we're going to use our Resonance Liberation, and then Heavy Attack Detonate, and then our Resonance skill, all at once. Okay, what the heck just happened there? Okay, so let's look at the footage. So from here, I'm going to use my Resonance Liberation, right? And then we're gonna use a Heavy Attack Detonate. Now, from the first rule, that once you detonate this ice creation with the first hit of Heavy Attack Detonate, it's going to explode no matter what, right? So I can use like different animations here and it will still detonate. So the animation I choose here is going to be my Resonance skill. So I use my Resonance skill here, but what happens is rule number 2, all ice creations are going to explode at the time of detonation, right? So I am creating an ice field here right before the detonation time, so that you see I'm using my Resonance skill right here, but the ice creation is already gone. It's detonated already. And that's because of rule number 2. Okay, so if you already didn't know, there is an original rotation where everyone thought it was the fastest. That's going to be using your Resonance skill, and then you animation cancel that with your Resonance Liberation, followed by a Heavy Attack Detonate. So it's gonna look something like this. Okay, so you might be thinking, okay, what the heck? Why is that not any faster, right? Okay, so I'm going to explain it step by step. Okay, so first, when we use our Resonance skill right here, right, wow, that was so fast I couldn't even stop it. Right, so right here. So we're using our Resonance skill right here. We're actually going to eliminate this time right here. So it's a few nanoseconds actually. But we're going to get rid of this with the rotation I showed you before, okay? So that's basically it. Because essentially both rotations use a Resonance Liberation and then a Heavy Attack, right? So that time is the same. So we're going to use a Heavy Attack here and bam, right? But during this heavy attack detonate animation, after we detonate the ice creation from the resonance liberation, there's a certain amount of time we need to wait until the ice creations explode. In this rotation, we're just using our heavy attack detonate and then waiting the whole time. We're going to just let the heavy attack detonation animation happen. Okay, but what we're doing with the faster rotation, right? So we're going to use a heavy attack detonate here, right? But during this downtime of this animation, we could still cancel it because as long as the first hit hits the ice creation, it's going to explode, right? But during this downtime, during this heavy attack detonation, we're actually just gonna do an animation. We're just gonna use our resonance skill during this time, right? Because during this time, you're not gonna do anything anyway. So why not just add in your resonance skill right here to save you time, right? So that's what we're doing right here. We are getting rid of the time that we're using the resonance skill initially with the old classic rotation. And literally it's a few nanoseconds, but it just feels smoother, much faster, and it's so much better. So you might say like, oh, okay, but she's like in the air and flipping right now, so that's going to waste more time. But I actually didn't show you the full rotation. Heavy attack detonate, and then resonance skill, right? So we're in the air, we're doing a backflip. We want to cancel out this animation, right? Yeah, we want to spend less time airborne, right? We can use our echo skill right here, right in midair, as I showed you before. And that's the full rotation. And that's how you're going to save all that time. I really appreciate you watching my video. If it's helping you out so far, please make sure to like and subscribe. It would really help me out. Thank you. Okay, so now that we keep that in mind, I'm going to show you the top 3 fastest rotations you can do with Sanhua. So we're going to fill her Concerto gauge the fastest as possible. All 3 of these have their pros and cons, so I'm going to explain everything to you. Okay, let's look at our first rotation. I'd say this is the fastest, most efficient, most balanced way for S0 to S4 Sanhua. So we're going to start off with an intro skill to normal heavy attack to basic attack 5, and then resonance liberation, and then heavy attack detonate, and then to resonance skill to echo swap cancel. Okay, and let's watch it in normal speed just once. Super quick. Okay, so a few things to note here. We're going to set up with a normal heavy attack to basic attack 5 to get more of that extra crit rate if you have S1 Sanhua, and also to increase the damage of Ice Burst. So yeah, it seems like normal heavy attack to basic attack 5 takes too much time, but trust me, this is the fastest if you are not S5. You know, it's really good for overall damage. And another thing to keep in mind is that sometimes Sanhua's intro skill kind of makes smaller enemies like bounce up, and then sometimes you might miss your resonance skill or your liberation. So when you do just a normal heavy attack to basic attack 5, you give them some time to kind of land so that you don't miss your attacks. So that's why I feel like it's a very balanced rotation as well. And just one thing to keep in mind when we look at this, right? We do that intro skill and then basic attack 5, resonance liberation, and then this heavy attack detonate. We're going to cancel out the second hit of this detonate attack, okay? So we're not gonna get that energy from there, but we're gonna use our resonance skill during that to cancel it out, okay? So it's very quick. So it's really hard to see the resonance skill here. But basically, we're going to cancel out the second hit of the heavy attack detonate, and then while you're in midair, you are going to cancel it out, that backflip animation that takes a lot of time, with an echo skill. So you save a lot of time doing this. So overall, this is a really great rotation you can just pretty much use forever, honestly. Even if you get to S5 Sanhua, I think this is a good rotation to at least get more damage as well. So if I had to do one rotation for the rest of my life, this would be it. Okay, now this could be controversial, but this is going to be the fastest Concerto rotation for S5 Sanhua, S5 plus Sanhua. So we're going to start with the intro skill, and then a speck of heavy attack, normal heavy attack, like just like a nanosecond, and then a liberation, and then heavy attack detonate, and then cancel with your resonance skill to echo swap cancel. Okay, and let's watch that in normal speed once too. And and super fast, right? So the difference between this rotation and the previous rotation is that we're taking out the basic attack 5, because that does take up more time. But if you do the liberation to heavy attack detonate to resonance skill cancel, what happens is you are going to have like a speck of like Concerto energy missing, like literally so little missing that you can't complete a full rotation from that sequence. So to solve that issue, we're going to add a normal heavy attack in the middle, but depending on your skill level, you do not have to like completely use the whole normal heavy attack. You literally just have to touch the enemy just a little bit. So like if I want to show you even slower, we could do this frame by frame. So let's go right here, right? So we're going to do the intro, right? We're going to do the normal heavy attack. But literally, I did it just for just a little second right here, if you can like see it. Like I literally just... That's it. Like you're not even doing the full spin. You're not even attacking the enemy. I just touched them, right? And that is going to solve the little speck that we're missing. So you see that? I didn't even really do my heavy attack completely. But you can like let it linger a little bit. It'll be even safer to do that so that you can get the full rotation. But yeah, pretty much you just have to hit the enemy just a little bit. But if you do it too fast and you don't even hit the enemy, this is not going to work. So from the classic traditional rotation I told you about, this is literally like a few nanoseconds faster. So technically this is the fastest way, but this rotation is safer than that way. But both rotations honestly are kind of risky though. So there is a con to this rotation, and the only thing is that when you use a normal heavy attack on smaller enemies, they're going to kind of bounce up a little bit, okay? So the intro kind of makes them bounce up, and then a normal heavy attack, a little bit of it will make them bounce up a little more. And then when you use your liberation, sometimes it might miss, okay? So that's a slight problem, right? But other than that, this is going to be your fastest rotation as S5 Sanhua. Okay, so let's go to our third rotation. This is the classic rotation that a lot of people have been using for a while. So this is a very simple and easy way to get your Concerto gauge up actually. So basically you do an intro skill, and then you do a resonance liberation, and you cancel it really quick with a resonance liberation to heavy attack detonate, and then echo swap cancel. Okay, and let's watch that at normal speed. Yeah, super quick and just like very easy to do. Okay, so a few things about this rotation is that we are going to skip any like normal heavy attacks or any basic attack 5s. We're going straight into it. You're just going to use your resonance skill first. So there's less risk of like hitting a smaller enemy and missing any of your attacks. So that's why it's good. This rotation is good. Okay, and once you land here, we're going to use our resonance skill, right? But we're going to cancel it immediately with a resonance liberation to save you time, right? So like it's really hard to see here, but yeah, you saw I canceled out my resonance skill. Okay, now here's the difference between the other rotations I first showed you. So the difference between the previous rotations is that the heavy attack detonate, once you use it, we rely heavily on the second hit of it. In the previous rotations, we don't rely or use the second hit of heavy attack detonate. So the risky part about this rotation is that sometimes this second hit misses. And when that misses, you are not going to get a full Concerto gauge. You're going to have a little speck of Concerto gauge or Concerto energy left that you need. And that causes a problem. So this rotation is not consistent. And sometimes you might miss your first hit of your heavy attack detonate as well. So like if any of those are missing, you're not going to be able to use your outro skill. So to be honest, I don't like this rotation. I think it's the most inconsistent one because enemies are always moving and sometimes you miss like one of these hits. So I don't recommend it. Okay, so now for our main DPS rotations, I'm going to teach two. So I'm going to explain it first. Okay, so we're going to start off with an intro skill and a normal heavy attack to basic attack 5, and then to a heavy attack detonate to resident skill, and then we're going to do 2 heavy attack detonates here, and then our resonance liberation, and then again 2 heavy attack detonates right here, and we're going to set up our crit rate again, normal heavy attack to basic attack 5, and then our resonance skill comes up, and then another heavy attack detonate to echo swap cancel. Okay, so let's explain that a little bit step by step. So for DPS Sanhua, you definitely always want to set up your crit rate by using your basic attack 5, right? And then from here, if you have S0 to S4 Sanhua, you should do a heavy attack detonate. But for S5 Sanhua, the ice creations detonate by themselves, so technically you don't need to do it. But if you want a little bit extra damage with one more heavy attack detonate, you can, but you don't need it for S5 Sanhua. So we do that heavy attack detonate, and then we're going to use our resonance skill here. Okay, but what's the reason to not use your resonance liberation here, right? Because usually we're going to use our resonance skill and then use our resonance liberation, right? So the weird thing is we actually want her to do the complete backflip here. Because if you cancel it out with your resonance liberation, it wastes more time, because I don't know why, but once you use your liberation, the countdown on your resonance skill stops. So during the whole time of your liberation, the cooldown of your resonance skill just completely stops. So you actually want that timer to linger a little bit so that you can use your resonance skill again. So that's why I split the resonance skill with like 2 heavy attack detonates in between. And I think this is the most efficient way to do this. So yeah, we're going to use 2 heavy attack detonates here, and we're still waiting for our cooldown for our next resonance skill. Resonance liberation, and then just 2 heavy attack detonates to wait it out. And then a normal heavy attack to basic attack 5 to set up crit rate again right before we do our last resonance skill. We do have like we have like 0.1 second left, right? Until our resonance skill. We use it, and then a heavy attack detonate for the final hit, and then echo swap cancel. So depending on if you do the initial heavy attack detonate, you should have around like 15, 16, or like 17 seconds of damage. And I think that is a good amount of time for your buffs to last, especially for Shorekeeper if you have her. So you can do a lot of damage as on-field Sanhua. And hopefully the repetitive heavy attack detonates are not too boring for you, but they do a lot of damage. So yeah, I tried to make this rotation like kind of fun and also like efficient. So I think this is like one of her best rotations as a main DPS. Okay, so for the next rotation, it's a little more practical because not everyone's going to do the Tower of Adversity. And this is like, you can just do this kind of rotation anytime. So basically, I'm making it a little more flexible. So we're going to start with an intro skill. And then we're going to set up with a normal heavy attack to basic attack 5. And then a heavy attack detonate to resonance skill right to resonance liberation. And then just a mix of heavy attack detonates and a mix of normal heavy attack to basic attack 5. Just like in any sequence and order. Doesn't matter what you do exactly. Just makes it more fun, right? Yeah, and you don't even have to wait for your resonance skill to go up. But pretty much for this rotation, just do whatever the hell you want after your liberation. Okay, a few key points here. And again, if we start off with the intro skill, like if you are S5 Sanhua, you don't have to do a heavy attack detonate here to detonate this ice creation. But for the extra damage, you can if you want, right? Okay, but now for the next part of this rotation, now it gets a little interesting. Because previously, like for DPS Sanhua mains, like with the old like Glacio set, you would do a resonance liberation first, you know, to empty out your resonance energy, and then you can use a resonance skill to get more energy back, right? But we're going to actually build Sanhua with the new Frosty Resolve set. And when you cast resonance skill, it grants 22.5% glacial damage. So we want that first, okay? So that's why we are using resonance skill first, and then a resonance liberation, which will also increase resonance skill damage by 18%. So honestly, you don't get that initial 18% buff with your resonance skill, but at least your ice burst will get that damage buff, at least, right? So resonance skill first, and then cancel out the animation, the backflip animation, with a Resonance Liberation, okay? And then from here, you got your buffs, so now you just start attacking however you want. And usually heavy attack detonate or basic attack 5s are really good here, okay? And then you can swap out with the new Echo at any time. Okay, now let's go through her weapons. A very safe and good weapon choice is the Commando of Conviction. Attack percent main stat, and then if you use your intro skill, you're going to increase your attack by 15%. And most likely, you will get more copies of these, so then you can synchronize these and get rank 5. So you can never go wrong with Commando of Conviction. Endless Collapse is also a great sword too, and it's going to give you some resistance energy. She doesn't really need it, but it does, any extra would help. Increase attack by 10% and last for 16 seconds. Another good choice, but you're most likely not going to be able to synchronize it and make it rank 5 that much as Commando Conviction. If you don't have any of those, Lunar Cutter is okay too. It does take a while to get her stacks up, and it's not as much as attack as Commando of Conviction. But if you don't have any of the previous two, I would go with this. If you don't have any of those, I would just craft the Fables of Wisdom in Renacida. An attack percent main stat, and the passive, it's not the best. You need to attack enemies that are affected by negative statuses to increase your attack percent. So the passive might be a little hard to get up, but this should outdamage any 3-star weapon. And if you don't have any of those 4 stars, you can use the Sword of Night 3-star weapon. It's still pretty good. Attack percent main stat, and if you get it to rank 5, you will get a 16% attack percent increase with your intro skill. So it's still pretty good. So the Emerald of Genesis is a great weapon on her. You get crit rate on the main stat. You're going to get some energy regen. She doesn't really need it, but any extra energy regen is great. Unfortunately, she can't get the full attack stacks on her resonance ability since her resonance skill cooldown is 10 seconds. But regardless, this sword is really good. Very high base attack. Try to use it on her if you can. Okay, Blazing Brilliance is Chang'Li's signature weapon, but she can use it and it is her best in slot. You're going to get a crit damage main stat, you're going to get some attack increased in her passive. Okay, so pretty much you're going to, every time you do damage, you're going to get stacks where it increases your resonance skill damage. And you can get up to 14 stacks. So it's just a sword that boosts your resonance skill damage, which, boosts her resonance skill plus her ice burst damage as well. Her second best weapon is going to be Red Spring, a main stat of crit rate. And basically it's going to increase her basic attack damage by a lot. So you can use more basic attack 5s. So yeah, if you have the sword, you can use it on her. Okay, now let's talk about her Echo sets. The best one for sub DPS Sanhua is going to be the Moonlit Cloud set. You're going to get some energy regen, and then also when you use your outro skill, you're going to increase the damage of the next resonator. In the 4 cost slot, you definitely want to use Impermanence Heron. You're going to boost the damage of the next character, and also you're going to get a lot of energy by using this Echo. For main stats, you want to focus on crit rate usually, but you can also do crit damage if your weapon has crit rate. For 3 cost Echoes, if you want specifically her to be stronger, you can use Glacial damage bonus, but if you are planning to share a Moonlit Cloud set, I would recommend attack percent. That way you can share with your other characters and you would save resources. And then for the 1 cost Echoes, you want a main stat of attack percent. So for substats, if you want to maximize her damage, go for crit rate, crit damage. Followed by, I think attack percent would be a good general substat to increase everything. And then followed by energy regen. Followed by flat attack, and then any damage bonus would be welcome as well. For her DPS build, we're going to try the new Frosty Resolve set. So the Frosty Resolve set, it doesn't give you that much glacial damage bonus. So for the 2 set, it's going to increase your resonance skill damage by 12%, and obviously it's going to increase your resonance skill plus your ice burst damage. So that's really good. And then once you cast your resonance skill, you're going to get a 22.5% glacial damage bonus. And then once you cast your resonance liberation, you're going to get another resonance skill damage bonus by 18%. So for the Freezing Frost set, the original glacial set gives you about 40% glacial damage bonus, but here's the balance. You don't need to use your Echo skill to get glacial damage bonus or your resonance skill damage bonus. But with the other one, with the Lampy Lumen Myriad, you would have to use it like 3 times and it takes up a lot of time. So that's the balance there. You're going to get automatic glacial damage bonus and you don't have to use this echo anymore. So honestly, I think overall this set is way better, the new set for her. But one more downside is that this echo is specifically made for Carlotta. You need to use your Resonance Liberation 4 times to use the enhanced echo skill version. So it's going to be very unlikely for you to use 4 liberation skills just to use the enhanced skill. So you probably don't have to even worry about that. So just use the regular echo skill for this. For 4 cost echoes, you definitely want crit rate or crit damage based on like which weapon you have. For 3 cost echoes, you're going to go with glacial damage bonus. And for the 1 cost echoes, obviously attack percent. For substats, okay, definitely crit rate or crit damage. And then if you want a more balanced approach, I would go with attack percent so that you have like overall damage for everything. But if not, you can go like try to get more resonance skill damage as well. That will increase your damage by a lot. And then there's also a niche build where you can add heavy attack damage bonus if you're going to use more Tefi. But I don't really recommend like farming like echo substats just for that team unless you love that team. And flat attack and energy regen is always good to have. And having extra resonance liberation damage can't hurt. Okay, now let's talk about her teams. Let's talk about her sub DPS teams first. A few things before we start. Just build your teams however you want. It doesn't matter what is meta. As long as you enjoy the characters, you should just play them. I'm just going to give you some of my suggestions that have like good synergy with Sanhua. Also, I'm going to keep Verena in the 3rd slot unless like I feel like another healer would be better in this slot. But other than that, I'm going to keep Verena, but you can pretty much put any healer here most of the times. Okay, so the first team is our premier free-to-play friendly team with Encore and Verena. Encore's Liberation turns her attacks into like basic attacks. She does a lot of basic attack damage, so Sanhua is a no-brainer here to have her as her sub DPS. If you are Ling Yang main, yes, Sanhua also will help you out a lot. She's going to boost your basic attack damage, and that's what Ling Yang focuses on. So Lumi is a relatively new character, but she is a main DPS. And a lot of her attacks are basic attack damage as well. So Sanhua is going to help Lumi a lot. Another great free-to-play friendly option is Havoc Rover and Sanhua. Obviously Danjin or Rochia would be better supports for Havoc Rover, or if you don't have them or you don't want to use them, Sanhua is your next best bet. Havoc Rover will use a lot of basic attacks. Okay, and probably the premier team that you can use with Sanhua is with Camellia. Camellia also uses a lot of basic attacks. And then we're also going to add Shorekeeper here to maximize her damage output. And it would be even better for Sanhua to be S6 to have to give like an attack percent boost. So not the most free-to-play friendly team, but it's a great team to use. Obviously Rochia is going to be better for Camellia, but Sanhua is your next best bet. Okay, now for main DPS teams. Honestly, main DPS teams are a little bit tricky. They're not the most free-to-play friendly. You definitely need to have like a lot of 5-star weapons and like 5-star supports. So it could be a little bit niche to make Sanhua main DPS, but it can definitely work. Like she is super strong. So maybe the most free-to-play friendly and the most viable, like let's say like this team can do wonders in the Tower of Adversity. Like they can do a good deal of damage. Like they can pretty much clear the tower pretty much. But you have to build them really well. So we're going to have a dual DPS team. So both of these will be kind of like a main DPS. So you're just going to swap these two in and out pretty much. You don't have to stay in the field that long. But Sanhua is kind of giving the support here by giving Yang Yang an additional basic attack damage, which her like very strong attack, Feather Release, is considered basic attack damage, and you want to definitely buff that. So if anything, Yang Yang might be the star of the show here, but still, Sanhua is going to be built for damage, not like using a Moonlit set or something. We're going to use Frosty Resolve. And for casual teams, you can use like Baiju or Verena, but I don't recommend them for the tower. Verena could work. And then Baiju works really well if she's S6 because she can provide glacial damage for Sanhua actually. I think also a dual DPS team with Sanhua and Spectral Rover is going to be really good too as well. It's going to be the same thing with like Yang Yang. You're going to just quick swap out and just use all your strongest attacks all at once and then just swap back to Shorekeeper. But yeah, like the first two characters, pretty free to play friendly, right? And Spectral Rover is going to use a lot of basic attacks, so Sanhua will definitely help. Okay, so Sanhua's premier team where she is solely the main DPS is going to be Sanhua, Zheji, and Shorekeeper. This is pretty much her best main DPS team, because Zheji is going to increase Glacial damage bonus and Resonant Skill damage bonus. So it's perfect for Sanhua. And then obviously Shorekeeper is going to provide the crit rate, crit damage, and damage buffs. Amazing team, definitely can clear out the tower, but it would be nice if Shorekeeper has her signature weapon to increase more attack. But in any case, like this is like the best possible main DPS team you can have. Not very free to play friendly, but it is what it is. So I do want to leave room for a little more casual teams. So I don't recommend this team for like the tower, honestly. But if you're like planning to just play in the overworld and just to have fun, you can do a team like this with Tao Chi. She can provide extra resonant skill damage bonus, which is good for Sanhua's Ice Burst and her resonant skill. And then you have Verena, very free to play friendly. You can have Baizha, also S6 Baizha would be great here as well. But don't get me wrong, like you can still progress the tower a bit, but I think it would be extremely hard on like the highest difficulties, like when the enemies are at like level 100. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Okay, and this is another niche team, but with Mortefi, he can buff up Sanhua's heavy attack damage. So the playstyle might be a little boring, but basically you're going to just heavy attack, detonate, spam all the way. And surprisingly, they can do a good amount of damage. And if you want, if you have Shorekeeper, you can add her and you can do like pretty decently in the tower. But yeah, it's a very niche build. And then you would also have to add maybe like heavy attack like substats too. So that might not be the most ideal, but you know, if you want to use Mortefi, you can. For her Forte priorities, I would level up Forte Circuit and Resonance Liberation equally, followed by her Resonance skill, followed by her normal attack, and then to her intro skill. Maybe a little more priority to Forte Circuit though, if you really want to figure out which one you want to level. Okay, so for her sequence nodes real quick, at S1, if you use basic attack 5, you can increase Sanhua's crit rate by 15% for 10 seconds. Yeah, this is really good. It does affect your rotations. You want to start off with a basic attack 5 a lot of times. At S2, you're going to decrease the stamina cost of your heavy attack detonates by 10. Also, if you use her resonance skill, she's going to have more resistance to interruption for 10 seconds. For S3, Sanhua's damage dealt is increased by 35% with targets with HP below 70%. This is really good, increases their damage a lot against enemies that have lower health. At S4, you get an energy refund of 10 when you use your Resonance Liberation, and the damage of your next heavy attack detonate will increase by 120%. So S5 is definitely one of her best sequence nodes. The crit damage of your Ice Burst, like when you detonate your Ice Creations, is going to be increased by 100%, so more damage. And also, they are going to automatically explode now, so you don't need to use your heavy attack detonate to explode them. So this could be useful, especially for your intro skill. Like you can just kind of leave it alone. You don't have to detonate it for extra damage anymore. So this does come in handy. So if you like kind of leave your Ice Creations out and you swap to another character, you can actually also get some energy from that as well. It's not stated here, but I believe Ice Burst, when it does some damage to enemies, you're going to get extra Concerto energy. So remember, that affects your rotation, so if you have S5 Sanhua, you can do less attacks to get faster Concerto energy. S6 makes her a very good support character. You're going to increase team members' attack percent. If you detonate any like Ice Prism or Glaciers, that's going to be the Ice Creations from your Resonant Skill and Liberation. And you can stack this up to 2 times, so you can go up to 20% attack. Thank you so much for watching my guide. I hope you enjoy your free Sanhua skins. And now I'm sure you know how to use Sanhua a lot better now. If you liked the video, please make sure to like and subscribe. It would really help me out. If you want to watch more of my videos, I have some beginner ones and also some character guides on the left here. Thanks for watching again. Take care now.